Make it easier for them.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise of Justice Movement, the podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host and the founder of the Rise of Justice Movement and the Rise of Justice Movement, the podcast. All right. So, yet again, another episode of our candidate series. And I've said this a couple times, but I genuinely mean this one. I'm actually really excited to hear from this human being that has a deeply incredible platform but also is doing the social media game and gaining a lot of momentum. And it's just so exciting to continue to sit back and seeing. And, Salaam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Zachary.
Absolutely. So I know this is a little bit of a loaded question, right? And there's a lot that can be said whenever it comes to why somebody decides to run for office. So walk us through, like who you are, what your story is, and how did your story influence you to run for office?
So I'm a public interest lawyer. I used to work at the Virginia Poverty Law Center, but before that, I was a child of immigrants. I still am a child of immigrants, but I was as well. And we grew up low income, and my parents were hardworking. My dad worked, 9 to 5. My mom raised us, and we relied on programs like free school meals and WIC to get by. As a child of immigrants, I learned English by watching PBS shows like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Sesame Street. So, Zachary, if at any time I just say, me want cookie, that's why. And then, I went to public school, public libraries. When I was in law school, I got to serve veterans when I was working in the veterans clinic. And I saw firsthand the utter tragedy of the state of our Veterans Administration. And then I got into public interest law when I started working at the Virginia Poverty Law Center and later moved on to the Food Research and Action Center. And what we did at VPLC was, we expanded SNAP for 25,000 families. And we were the only advocate in the country who was able to convince Republicans and Democrats to vote unanimously to do that in the state of Virginia. We also expanded free school meals for tens of thousands of children. We repealed racist and unjust laws. We increased TANF cash assistance for the poorest families in Virginia, not once, but twice by historic amounts. I'm also on the public service loan forgiveness program because, hey, I'm working in the nonprofit areas and public sector. So all of these things that have helped me and tens of millions of other folks who they are being cut and gutted by the Republicans. And not just to be cruel, but also to give us tax cuts to the richest folks in human history. So, with my experience, both personal and professional, I can't sit by and just write, fact sheets and one pagers. Now is the time to take this experience and expertise into Congress, where we need more policy wonks who aren't there to cure symptoms, but to actually go to the root causes. And that's why we have the ABCs of our campaign. A is for Medicare for all, B is for tax the billionaires, and C is for cookie. See, I told you it was going to come. C is for campaign finance reform. We need to go to the root of the matters. These are all root busting opportunities here because when I was at the Virginia Poverty Law Center, I learned that poverty is man made. It's a policy issue. Poverty is a policy choice. And I can say that with extreme precedent because during the pandemic, the early years of the pandemic, we saw the government do something called the expanded child tax credit. And you may remember that this was, heralded as this is going to cut child poverty in half, and everybody celebrated that. I grieved because I'm like, you could have just added another zero and ended child poverty entirely because it's just a money issue. So that's what we're going in for. We, we don't need people going in there trying to cure symptoms because that always makes things worse because poverty is the Gordian knot of our time. So we have to realize we don't need the rope. Cut it in half and let's get rid of it. So when we're, targeting our ABCs, that's going right to the root of the cause because we don't got time for this.
You weren't joking about the cookie coming into effect. I'm here for this. And, the attacks on public media, right? You mentioned about PBS. So I grew up watching Mr. Rogers, Clifford the Big Red Dog. I grew up watching, I'm trying to think of some of those others. There was Dragon Tales.
Reading
There was,
Rainbow.
yes. And I'm so excited it's coming back. I'm so excited it is back. But it'll never be LeVar Burton.
Mhm.
But it's going to continue growing and continue being even better. And I love public media. NPR. We have a NPR station in Kansas City. It's KCUR. Used to be on the UMKC campus, but they were abruptly removed from their location. So now
Mhm.
they're doing it in like I can't remember what they said they're in now. It's way smaller, you know, uh, like office space. But it used to be on the University of Missouri Kansas City's campus, but they were uprooted and removed. I can't remember the exact reason or like bullshit reason that they gave, but that's practically what it was.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not the biggest UMKC fan, if you can't tell. But thinking about, there's redistricting getting ready to happen in Virginia, and it takes effect in the next couple of days. So as of right now, at least for the next couple of days, you're running against the incumbent of Robert Whitman. But talk about the redistricting and what it's been looking like in Virginia
Mhm.
and also Texas and California and some of the other states have also done redistricting too. So let's talk about that for a second and the redistricting to protect democracy. There,
Yeah, the
obviously,
redistrict.
there's a lot of pushback on it, but let's break
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah, in fact, and today the team and I were out at the early voting locations. It was Super Saturday today. So we had the team at three of the polling locations in our district, two in Chesterfield County and one in the Western Henrico County. And we were out there just, thanking people for voting and then letting them know, hey, the next election is August 4th. It's the primary, so make sure you come out and vote for us. We're here to inform and educate. Now, the redistricting that's going on is not something that exists in a vacuum. Virginia is only doing this because Trump had Texas redistrict so that they could get five more Republicans in Congress. And then a bunch of other red states followed suit so that the Republicans can maintain the House. So, essentially steal the election. So, and blue states responded, and Virginia also is one of those states that's responding. And when I announced my candidacy in July of last year, redistricting wasn't even a thought. So we were going in to flip the first congressional district, knowing that this is completely flippable because people are very upset with what happened with the big ugly bill and all the ways that the current incumbent has just trampled on people's rights and opportunities for the betterment of those who are donating to his campaign and for those who are funding all these wars. So I was like, from that viewpoint, we can totally flip this district. Now, when we had the November election just recently, Virginia has those off-year elections for governor and House of Delegates. We saw the district actually flip. So it's just like, all right, this is even better news. And then, of course, at that point, redistricting was in motion. So now we are on the cusp of going into a new district of D plus like 7 or 8, even more. So it's a really a wonderful opportunity to push back on a federal level. Now, of course, this is temporary because people should always know what the arguments are. And one of the things is that the census that happens every 10 years is the indicator for how the lines and the maps get redrawn. So 2030 is the census, meaning 2032 was when the lines get drawn. And exactly what I like to explain to people is like this redistricting referendum is yes, we have to gerrymander to fight back against what Trump has started. But if you're truly against gerrymandering, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, then you have to look at the longer timeline here that we win the House, the Democrats win the House, and they win the Senate and the White House in 2028. Then come 2029, we can actually ban gerrymandering. And how do we know that? Because in 2019, the House Democrats actually passed a bill to ban gerrymandering. I think it was called the For the People Act. And it died in the Senate thanks to the Republicans. So the Republican elected Congress members in Virginia right now who are raising, or crying and whining about, hey, redistricting's bad, yada, yada, yada. You could literally write a bill right now banning gerrymandering and you have the House, you have the Senate, you have the White House. If you truly believe it's bad, draft the bill, pass it, and have Trump sign it. Like you have the majority. And hey, you know what? You can just copy and paste what the Democrats did a few years ago. Like we can get this done. So Republicans are obviously preaching double standards. It's the only standards they have. So Democrats need to win this so that we can absolutely ban it. And once we're in Congress, we'll be happy to co-sponsor it, if not draft it as well. We also have to understand that um, these are the arguments that we've been using on the trail, and they've been incredibly effective and helpful to folks. We did a video recently about, hey, here's 5 arguments to know when talking about redistricting. So they've been helpful. We want to be out there not just holding on to these in our head, but sharing the wealth of knowledge so people can push back against what their relatives, friends, neighbors might be saying, and just letting them think about it. Because Zachary, it's never about converting them right there. It's about planting seeds and then seeing how those seeds grow.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think it kind of leads into talking about the next point is campaign finance reform. So Citizens United, oh my gosh. And I've said it a couple times on this podcast, and I'll say it again. If you're older than 2010, you're older than Citizens United in that ruling, against the FEC. And thinking about Citizens United, thinking about the influence of dark money, and thinking about money influencing politics, how do we, or I guess essentially, where do we go from here?
Yep.
Right. So, what is your vision for like campaign finance reform and thinking about, grassroots here, thinking about that people power, the people focus, and like you said, for the people. Let's dive into that.
There's a double standard here with Citizens United. If corporations were actually people, then I could have corporate documents in my passenger seat and my back seat, and I could totally drive in the carpool lane. But that's
Mhm.
not allowed. So obviously there's a double standard here. Now, we can't undo Citizens United with the current makeup of the Supreme Court. If we tried, then, the court will just rule in favor of the corporations that are going to bring suit. So we have to go about it in some more strategic ways. One of those ways is uncapping the House. Now, we've had 435 representatives in the House since 1929, almost a century. So anytime, and this goes into the redistricting argument, back to the redistricting argument, because it's all connected, of course. People are, Republicans are saying, well, I don't want someone from Northern Virginia or Richmond representing me out in rural Virginia. Well, it doesn't matter how you slice up the state, you will never have actually good representation. And the core of the issue is not redistricting, it's capping the House. So the 435 hasn't changed in a century. And so back in the day, like decades and decades and decades ago, it was one representative for every 30,000 people. Zachary, take a wild guess. How many people are in my district?
I want to say, is it over 100,000? Legitimate
Yeah,
question. Is it over 100,000?
it is.
Is it more than 500,000?
It is.
Holy shit. So I would say upwards of probably 800,000, right?
800,000. Yeah. Yep.
Damn.
And so it's approaching a million.
Right.
And that's just like not sustainable. And so there's no way you can carve up the pie with the current 435 to actually have good representation. What we need is to uncap the House. And there is something known as the Wyoming rule. There's a lot of different maths that are like, hey, we can um, carve up the House this way so that you have better representation. One of the things I've been like leaning on that I like, and I'm not fully set on it, but the Wyoming rule says that you look at the state with the least amount of population, and that's Wyoming. Wyoming has about 500,000, like 570,000 people. So what they say is like for every 570,000 people, you get one representative. And so then that would actually help really shrink the districts in the right direction. So you'd see a lot more better representation. And I don't know if this would benefit one party over the other. I think it would just benefit the people. And so once we can ban partisan gerrymandering and actually get fair redistricting on a nonpartisan, not a bipartisan, but a nonpartisan basis, we could see so much more improvement in the way this country is run. And then, of course, expand the court and then undo Citizens United.
Mhm. Because you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of conversation around overturning Citizens United. And I think about it, I'm like, in theory, it sounds absolutely fantastic, right? But you also got to think about the realistic part of it in the fact that this current Supreme Court, we've saw what they've done with overturning Roe v. Wade. Um, and there's a lot of other things that's going to continue coming.
Mhm.
And this isn't your typical Supreme Court. This is the Donald Trump Supreme Court, and this is we're not going to be able to do it under this current Supreme Court.
Right.
So obviously expanding, and I like your idea of I'm not. I kind of like the Wyoming rule because it's more representative of the people. I get that, right? But
Mhm.
also I think uncapping the House is absolutely the way to go. I do. And I'm glad that Mr. Beat is endorsing candidates across the country. I know you're one of them. My fellow Kansan here. I think it's incredible, to continue pushing these progressive candidates that are running, for federal office to uncap the House, fight for that, and it's really simple. It really is.
Yeah, and the reason why this is a way to talk, uncapping the House is a way to talk about campaign finance reform because now all of a sudden there's too many elected officials to buy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Couple that with term limits, and you've got a whole new ball game. You're not going to be able to, corporate PACs, APAC, foreign interests, they won't be able to keep that investment, and it's going to be a nightmare for them, which is great.
So I want to shift gears, okay, and thinking about previous votes from Congress. One of them that pops in my mind is the Lake and Riley Act. Okay.
Mhm.
This one literally set the tone for what's happening right now. Okay.
Mhm.
If you were in Congress at the time that the conversation was around the Lake and Riley Act, one, would you have voted for it? Two, what would have been your pushback? And then three, what are we seeing as far as, it's implemented, it was signed, it's implemented, and it's given the powers to ICE that's happening right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about ICE and kind of jump in and talk about ICE and DHS. But let's talk about the Lake and Riley Act just
Yeah.
specifically for a second. Now, I don't want to say anything negative because what happened to her is absolutely horrific.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I will never condone murder by any stretch. I've had two friends that have been murdered. Right. I don't ever want to say that. However, this set a very dangerous tone for the shape of the country. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. What happened to Lakin? Absolutely horrific tragedy. 100%. What happened in the fallout? Also a tragedy. And this is not our first, rodeo. We've seen the same um, emotional assault on the people's senses happen post 9/11, which gave us not only these terrible wars that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, where hundreds of thousands, some say a million, people, innocent people, were killed. So many people were raped and persecuted in just awful, awful ways. And now we're doing that again in Iran and Lebanon, and Gaza's been going through that forever. Um, we use people, and Republicans are really good at using these emotional times to put through
Mhm.
legislation. The Patriot Act is one of those things, and the Patriot Act is one of the worst acts in modern history that really took away a lot of our civil liberties and created ICE and DHS. Now, of course, there are, it's good to have strong borders and secure borders. It's not good to have an agency that doesn't respect due process. And so, with ICE being emboldened through the Lake and Riley Act to do what they're doing, which is essentially the Slave Patrol 2.0, we're seeing them do exactly what the Slave Patrol was doing. There's been no change. And when you are an agency that's not created out of rational or logic thought, but created out of emotion and hatred and bias and racism, well, this is exactly how it's going to play out, where nobody is safe. People thought, oh, they're only going for undocumented immigrants. But to be an undocumented immigrant is a misdemeanor. It isn't, you don't get the capital punishment for this. And it's not supposed to be carried out by an agency. You got to go through due process. To be kidnapping children and putting them in concentration camps, for girls to be raped and be testing positive for pregnancy. I mean, like, this is a horror show. And what we are doing as a nation is sowing a lot of bad karma. And that karma hammer, if it hasn't already dropped, is going to drop and destroy this nation. And we will deserve it. But what I say, what I pray is like there are still good people in this nation, and we are fighting like heavens. We are fighting to get this country back. So, I know people across the world are watching America right now, grieving for what was, but knowing also that we are fighting, and we are trying our utmost. So that's why, again, we're running for Congress because somebody needs to fight back.
And it goes beyond like the No Kings rallies and the protests. Don't get me wrong. I attended my very first one and I had a very good time sitting back and,
Mm,
talking with other, voters and talking with organizations, but it goes further than that, right? We got to keep going. We
we
cannot
got it.
stop there.
Yeah.
And
What I love about No Kings was it's not just a one-off thing, but hey, we actually had booths there, right? And so it's like people were able to be like, "Oh, let me get involved with your campaign." So like, we move that ball forward, we grow and we build, and we have over 170. We're almost near 200 volunteers now, Zachary. So this is happening, man. And I'm not satisfied. I'm going for over 500.
I love that. And because you can never have too many, because there's always something to do. There's always a phone banking, there's always
Mhm.
canvassing. Speaking of which, so canvassing, obviously, there's a lot that goes into that. But what are you hearing from the constituents as like their main issues that they're focused on? What are Virginians really wanting right now? Obviously, the rent is too damn high. And then I think that's a standard, like literally across the entire country.
Yeah.
But what are you specifically hearing from people that you have been out and talking to in this district? What are you hearing? Like
You
what
know,
are they
the
telling you?
the affordability crisis is the crisis of our time, but Virginians are impacted in a different way because Virginia is the data center capital of the world. And the way that the state legislature has created agreements with the data centers is that they're not responsible for their energy costs. The Virginians are. So our energy bills have increased, not because of our use of the data centers, but because of the world's use of the data centers. So we are paying through the roof for these data centers. And with the loss of renewable energy programs that were cut via the Big Ugly Bill, we've lost opportunities to diversify our energy resources. So energy is one of the trying issues of our time, and the DCCC is pushing a candidate who ran in an election last year that she lost, who took $800,000 from the energy company. And the DCCC seemingly cannot read the room, knowing that people in Virginia are struggling. And with the Trump administration horny to cut LIHEAP, the Low Income Housing Energy Assistance Program, which helps people pay their energy bills when it's too hot for their heat and it's too cold, when it's too hot for their AC and too cold for their heat. Like we have super high energy prices. People in poverty cannot afford to pay their energy bills without LIHEAP. So that's always on the chopping block with the Trump administration. So it is issues upon issues upon issues. We also, of course, are just as anybody else impacted with the high gas prices, high grocery costs that have just outpaced people's income growth. People are and the biggest thing that's hitting them is, of course, the health insurance costs. That's why our priority is Medicare for all. I have yet to meet somebody on the door. Actually, one person at the door was just like, "Nah, this is too much for me." But like otherwise, everybody's just like, "Yeah, we need this." And then the other two issues of taxing the billionaires and campaign finance reform. These are also things that speak to the people, but Medicare for all is really like their litmus test. They're like, all right, this is great, and this also signals to us that you're going to be on the right side for like everything else.
Let's talk about Medicare for all for a second. So, how do we get there rooted in capitalism?
Hmm.
And whenever we have, because another lobby is, obviously big pharma and the pharmaceuticals. Because if we took care of the symptoms, there would be no such thing. Or, we took care of like the illnesses, the diagnoses, and etc. there'd be no such thing as big pharma. It would literally put them out of business.
Mhm.
I mean, like obviously in an ideal world, I would love to see this. But genuine question, and I'm in full support, and a lot of that comes from my own personal, experiences with healthcare. More importantly, my mom being a disabled woman, and also being gaslit by these providers, oh, you're just going through your regular menstrual cycle, you're just doing this, you got this going on. Come to find out, she was actually diagnosed with stage 3 cervical cancer last year.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily, this year, earlier this year, I think it was in either February or March, her cancer's gone. And
Okay.
now, but here's the thing. If she didn't have Medicaid expansion in the state of Missouri, she these cancer drugs are so absolutely batshit crazy priced. Um, Not only that, but also she has rheumatoid arthritis. She also has there's so many things that there's so many things that I just grew up and like listening to her being in pain is one of the worst feelings. And knowing that I can't do a goddamn thing about it is even worse. But what I can do is continue to get out and use my voice to vote for the candidates that take her into consideration with their thoughts. Now, obviously, we don't see that with the GOP. And I cannot lie and say that I see it with some Democrats because I do
Mhm.
not feel the Democrats are meeting the current moment and the current needs of the people. I don't. And a lot of that, again, goes into the campaign finance reform, getting rid of these PACs, getting rid of this big money, influencing these decisions. You can go in and talk to one of your elected officials, and I have a personal experience with this. I went to the Kansas state capitol and I said, "Hey, so you voted for, this, and you also introduced this." She's like, "Oh, I didn't even read it." Really? So that's interesting. She's like, "Oh, it was written by XYZ." I said, "But you introduced it. You don't even know what is in this damn bill. You introduced it and it passed. You don't even know what's in this bill. I've seen it too many times."
Yeah.
Kansas is not the only state that that happens in.
Yeah.
Multiple states. Because you have these lobbyist groups that go in, they draft this legislation, they put it in front of this legislator, like, "Here, we'll give you XYZ if you, do this, this, and this."
Was that Alec? Was it an Alec bill?
I don't even know. I don't
Oh.
remember what the hell it was, but it was a
Mhm.
while ago. I know that there's been so much happen, and I actually do think it was something along that line. It was
Yeah.
some really messed up policy,
Yeah. There's a few of
but
those. Yeah.
I told her it's like you don't even know what is in your policies. You don't even know you didn't even
Yeah. That's
it's
about right.
insane,
Hmm.
insane to me
Hmm.
that there's such this influence, and then you see people come in. Kansas became one of the first states to ban transgender people from having a driver's license that reflects your oh, you didn't hear about this, to
Mm.
reflect your true identity. And what they did was they revoked those driver's licenses of, I think it's like 273 people, like literally less than 1%, like literally less than 1% of the population of the state of Kansas. Obviously, it's still deeply important. My partner's transgender, but it's like, why are you worried about who's driving the vehicle? I don't
It's
give a damn. I don't care who's behind that wheel as long as you know how to freaking drive, which
it.
it's the Midwest. A key thing, if you've never been to the Midwest, they don't know how to fucking drive. They really don't. We stop at red light or we stop at green lights. We swerve in and out of traffic. Um, the
We st
posted speed limit sign says 65. We're doing 80. And then guess what? I'm going to get pulled over, but that motherfucker that's next to me is going to continue going. And the police aren't going to pay attention to them because I drive a white Nissan Rogue. They're watching these vehicles.
Uh-huh.
They're watching these vehicles. And the
Mhm.
police, specifically around where me and my mom live at, they know us. I've reported them, and now they're retaliating. So they're looking
Oh,
for every little reason they can
yeah.
to pull us over for the littlest thing. Oh,
Mm,
my mom has like a handicap placard, right?
mhm.
And they mess with that all the time. Yeah, that's a whole nother. We'll get into criminal justice here in just a second. But sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent. It just annoyed the shit out of me. But thinking about like the healthcare system. So think about Medicare for all. How do we
Right.
get there
Yeah.
rooted in capitalism?
So this also sticks to campaign finance reform. We need to elect candidates who are not beholden to the healthcare lobby. The healthcare lobby spends the most in our elections, billions and billions of dollars every year to buy these candidates so that they maintain the status quo. So like the Affordable Care Act was good. It did a lot of things for people who needed it. But what we also saw is how the health insurance companies, whose sole job is to create shareholder value. And how do you create shareholder value? Increase profits. So we are paying more every single year because their rates increase. Our employers are paying more as a result as well. When we had the Affordable Care Act subsidies, we had to give more in subsidies, which meant we were paying more in taxes. And when our claims are rejected, then they profit off of that as well. And if they also own the means of the production of prescription medication, then they also profit off of that. So they're making money 4 or 5 different ways from us. So it's a scam that no other nation in the world utilizes. And there's been over 70, maybe 80 now nations that have some sort of universal health care, and they haven't gone back. And so we are the redheaded stepchild, doing just the silliest thing because of, as you said, capitalism and greed. So the way to do it, the way to get to it is to elect candidates who are not beholden to the healthcare lobby. Medicare for all is a policy that is polling at well over 65%, maybe 70% now, across the political spectrum. So it's just like, yo, this is the time. But now to make it successful, Zach, we're like, yeah, you could pass it tomorrow with all the candidates elected, but it would fail immediately because one, we don't have enough doctors for today, and we don't have enough doctors for tomorrow when Medicare for all is enacted. So what we have to do is we also have to create the foundation for its success. And I haven't heard this talked about, so I love addressing this in a twofold scenario. One, we haven't had a lot of medical schools open in the last few decades, and we have like, caps on med school enrollment. So we've got to do something with the American Medical Association and the regulatory agencies within that space. Hey, we need more med schools, and we also need to increase the cap. We also need to do something about subsidizing the costs of because it costs so much money to become a doctor. We need to address
Mhm.
that. That is a priority of an issue. While we're trying to figure that out, that's going to help us for tomorrow's needs. To address today's needs, we need comprehensive immigration reform, not just to abolish ICE, but to also bring in more doctors and nurses and provide them incentives to come here. Maybe if you're practicing in a medical desert, you get, citizenship, fast track to citizenship, like 5 years, something like that, right? Like bring in that, increase the cap for doctors and nurses who can immigrate to this country and meet today's needs. So those are a couple ways I have in mind to make sure Medicare for all is successful. And in a capitalist world, the best way to get it through is to elect candidates who are not beholden to the capitalist puppet masters.
You said a key thing, the puppet masters. You said a very key thing, and that yes. So thinking about AI, okay, and thinking about how unregulated AI is. I'm thinking about like the AI data centers, but more importantly, I'm thinking about the water usage. I'm thinking
Mhm.
about, the pollution. I'm thinking about climate change. I'm thinking about a number of these things. Yeah, a number of these things. And I know my hometown of Independence, Missouri did some massive organizing against the data center that the city wants to open. And I say the city because people don't want it, but the city wants it. And they voted in favor of these bonds to open this data center, or like the like tax breaks for it. And thinking about that, and I'm more importantly, I'm thinking about like rural communities. Rural areas are really facing extreme backlash on like literally everything that's going on right now. They're feeling it, and they're feeling it probably worse than a lot of other people are. Hospitals are closing. Um,
Yeah.
Farmers are dying at astronomical rates of suicide.
Yeah.
It is deeply devastating. And then also knowing about the drought, like the droughts that are going on across the country. We're going into summertime. That's obviously going to continue going. But thinking about the unregulation of AI, what's your thoughts on this? And thinking about these data centers, thinking about the unregulated AI, and then just all connected. It's all together.
It's all connected in so many different ways. So I'm in favor of a moratorium on data centers.
Mhm.
We did a really great video on Instagram with a local expert on many things. Her name's Gray Montrose, about data centers. And one of the things she lifted up wasn't just that data centers are, environmentally not friendly, they're going to take your water, this, that, the other, but they're also a national security issue. So when you have data center alley, which is in Northern Virginia, like that's a target. And the way that they build data centers so close to neighborhoods, now that's a target on neighborhoods. So if a bad actor wants to do something bad, they have a great target. And so, what are these data centers fueling? I've heard from a data center developer that we need to have them in populated areas because we need to make sure the latency is as minimal as possible between the data center and autonomous vehicles. And I'm like, well, maybe we don't need autonomous vehicles. Just build more mass transit, build bike
Ta-da!
lanes. Like, we don't need, like, this is not a need. This is not even a want. People don't want this. What happens is that these counties get glassy-eyed when these billionaires come in and say, "Hey, we're going to give you a cut, or you're going to make some money off of this," and it's a cheap way for them to make money. And people want to build data centers because, hey, they're going to make bank from building that data center. But what we also have to understand is that this data center is not progressing society. Here in the first district of Virginia, we have had an explosion in population growth. Over 50,000 people have moved in the past 6 years. And what this means is we don't need data centers. We need hospital expansions. We need school expansions. We got kids sitting in trailers as sitting ducks. There's no security for them. We've got medical centers that need to be built. We've got homes. We've got rail that needs to be increased. We've got bridges that need to be repaired. There's so many jobs out there for unions and for others to bid on. And we need to be putting money into the things that help society, the infrastructure that helps us to grow and succeed, not to build data centers to drink our water and to pollute our air and to put a bullseye on our neighborhoods.
Especially the marginalized communities too. I'm thinking about like the immigrant communities, right? The area that I live in is very rich in like immigrant culture and immigrant, like a lot of the constituents are immigrants.
Mhm.
Um, Virginia did something that really, really surprised me. And it's House Bill 167, which was signed into law on Monday by Abigail Spanberger, current governor.
Hmm.
And essentially, what this did was it stripped the tax breaks for organizations connected to the Confederacy. I am in full absolute support of this. My grandfather was an Air Force veteran, and he was also a union organizer. So thinking about that, House Bill 167, which was passed by the Virginia House and Senate, specifically removed the Virginia division of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, the Stonewall Jackson Memorial, the Virginia division of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and the Confederate Memorial Literacy Society, along with other groups from the state's list of organizations that are exempt from state property taxes. This took serious guts to even think about passing, um, but I'm glad it did.
Yeah.
I really am. It's time to put it exactly where it belongs and move forward and continue pushing forward. So, my question is, what does your district look like? And what I mean by that is whenever you are traveling through your district, what do you see? Like, what's the vibe? What do you see? Like, what are the people like? Talk to me about specifically like your district. And this will be like the next to last question. I have a really good one next. Um, but what's the makeup of your district? What does it look like? What are the people like? Walk me through. I've never been to Virginia. I've been close to it. I take that back. I stayed in like I thought I was, I thought we were staying in DC. I went up with an organization. I thought we were staying in DC, but we actually went right across the state line into Virginia. So I guess technically I spent a week in there, but I spent my time literally at the nation's capital. But I was lobbying Congress at that time. But walk me through your district. What's walk me through it.
It's a beautiful district. We've got so much of Virginia's beauties and wonders. It's expansive. Like we said, it's 800,000 people, so it covers a lot. We've got parts of Chesterfield County and Midlothian is included in there. We got Western Henrico, which are, hustling suburbia, it's been growing rapidly. And then it comes, goes over into the Tappahannock, New Kent areas where there's a lot of new suburbia coming up. And a couple factories. We got the Coke factory and the Advanced Auto Parts, I believe, is there too. And then it goes into, the historic triangle of Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. And then it goes into the Chesapeake Bay, the Northern Neck areas of Virginia. So we've got everything in our district. And of course, the standard answer for any candidate is the people are the most beautiful part. And that's why we run. We don't run because it's a beautiful place. We run because we want to help the people, and we've met I want to thousands at this point of just hardworking people who love hosting a festival for their community. I took my wife and kids to the West Point Crab Cake Festival, and it was just a joy, seeing people come together and enjoy good food, good company. Hundreds of people were there. We've been, to different like Labor Day picnics and just getting to enjoy rural Virginia. Now, let me tell you this, Zachary. When I was doing my stump speech in Lancaster County, it was about, 200 or so Democrats in a room, an older white crowd. And, I'm like, this is rural Virginia. They're probably conservative. So, let's do what we can with our, relatively progressive agenda. And as I'm going through my stump speech, they're, appreciative. They're, applauding this, that. They like what they're hearing. And then comes my last point. And I don't know how they're going to take it because I'm like, this is an older white crowd. Are they conservative Democrats? Well, I don't know, but this is my campaign. I got to say it. And I said, and for God's sake, we need to end the genocide in Gaza. Zachary, that got the loudest applause of the night. And that blew me away. I did not expect that, but from what I'm gathering is that rural Virginians are more progressive than we think. And they are very frustrated with the party not having spoken out against the genocide. They're very frustrated that the party candidates continue taking money from AIPAC and pro-Israel donors. In fact, there was a poll that was done a few weeks ago that showed that rural Democratic voters are very upset. And so this is the litmus test of our time. The candidate that the DCCC is supporting hasn't condemned the genocide. And they're taking money from those who donate to pro-Israel causes. So it's just like, all right, people are looking for a change and they find us. And hey, we're here for them. And it doesn't matter which way the district lines get made up, whether the redistricting goes through. The lines are all made up, but the people's issues are the same. We can't afford anything.
That's a mic drop moment. I would say cookie drop, but I don't want to waste a good cookie, right? I had to
Don't
add
drop
that.
cookies.
I had to add that in there. But
Here,
oh gosh,
here.
yes,
All right.
yes, there we go. Um, and my last question to you, and this is going to be a long-winded answer. I already know this, but and you kind of just briefly touched on it, and it kind of prompted me to go ahead and ask this question. Do you feel that the DNC is meeting the moment? And I'm not going to say, I'm not, you know what? Let me rephrase this. Do you feel that the DNC leadership, because the base wants change, They just did the resolution to essentially like ban like APAC, etc., but it was shot down, right?
Right.
Do you feel that the DNC leadership is meeting the current moment,
So Ken Martin,
just in general?
or so yeah, I mean, I heard what Ken Martin has said about, that resolution on banning APAC. He said all dark money is bad. And that's like saying all lives matter, right? It's like, yo, no, there's a
There it
big
is.
problem here. And you gotta speak up to it. So we also saw something similar happen in Virginia's Democratic leadership, where we had a bill that was going to reform campaign finance, because this is the wild, wild west in Virginia. I mean, you look at, you can look at the numbers of how people can donate $250,000. One person can donate $250,000 to a candidate, and it's ridiculous. There's no laws. It's the wild, wild west. And so there was a measure to do campaign finance reform, but they got shot down within the Democrats because they're like, this is an election year. We need that money. We can do this later. It's like, you don't get it. Read the room. So, wait, I have ADD. What was the question?
Do you feel that the DNC leadership is meeting
Oh,
the current
no,
moment?
no. And like in my wheelhouse, I'm looking at Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, right? They are not meeting the moment. They just have
Mhm,
failed. And because what just happened recently with Jared Golden voting to
mhm,
let the war in Iran
mhm.
continue. Like, what was that about, Hakeem? Like, get your people in line. Like, what agreement happened behind closed doors? Because we know an agreement happened behind closed doors because Jared is not running for re-election. He's
Correct.
sacrificial lamb. Why? We know that this war on Iran is what Israel wants. So what is going on behind closed doors? And if Hakeem Jeffries cannot meet the moment, he's not fit to be the House.
Period. 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 He does have a progressive challenger, Vance Bostick. I was really excited to see, but they're trying to sabotage his campaign. They really
Mhm.
are because the establishment is, Hakeem puts up like this big like progressive front. It's like, oh yeah, I want to do this, but you get in there and you Tulsi Gabbard it. Oof. And going into midterms and then 2028 and then even beyond that like 2030,
Mhm.
the midterms with that and 2032, what we have right now is a warning shot as to what potentially can come, right? So we need effective and bold leadership in both
Mhm.
the presidency and the House and the Senate, et cetera, that works for the people and not this big money. And I do not feel that, and I say this as a hurricane member of the DSA, um, I do not feel that the current leadership is meeting the moment. They're not. And,
Mhm.
you said it best that if you can't get your people together, you shouldn't be in that position, period.
And but also it was never about getting the people together. There was
No,
some agreement made
no.
to make sure Jared was the guy that voted for it. And
And he took the brunt end of it, took the
yeah,
downfall, right?
yeah. So
And
something's going on, something fishy,
well, it's
and we're all
obvious.
suffering for it. Now, listen, it's politics, right? So, should
Mm,
Akeem become the speaker and sitting in Congress, I will work with him. I will have to work with him. That's just politics. Um, and when we got SNAP expanded in Virginia, we worked with corporate interests to get it through. We had a health insurance company in our coalition, a big box grocery store in our coalition, a community bank, because we were able to tell them that we have a shared vision here and you need to come to the table. And they did. And so as a result of that change up in that coalition, my predecessors had never done that. That's when, the subcommittee members saw that their donors were now in the coalition. They were in the room. So then they were like, oh, yeah, okay, there's something going on here. So that's how we were able to move that through while still getting everything we asked for. We didn't have to budge an inch. We got everything we asked for. So, hey, like, listen, we'll play ball.
I guess you got to find the people that are willing to, fight alongside you and push back against,
That's
these big donors, these big movers and shakers, big corporations.
it.
because we got to build that coalition. It does take all of us, but yeah. So again, I want to say thank you first of all for obviously fighting for your district, but also because what you do and what you will do in any in any district, etc., districting, etc., whenever you are elected, what you will do, yeah, you represent your constituents, but you also represent the entire country because what you do is going to impact all of us. So the last thing is, other than my thank you, how can people contribute to your campaign, first of all? And then secondly, how can they find you on social media?
Mhm.
I know we collaborate on posts, and I obviously welcome that. I love that, and continue doing so. We're always down to amplify as much as we can. We have this platform that wants to be activated. Let's activate it, and let's you know bring integrity to politics for the first time, because it has not met the moment. But how can people contribute to your campaign, follow you on social media, and uplift the work that you are doing?
I will answer that question, but I also want to call out the name of this podcast, Rise Above Justice. I love this title because it shows us that justice is not the ceiling, it's the floor. And what
Uh,
our campaign is about,
Pause,
yeah.
pause, pause. I'm writing this down, but say what you just said again because I want to get it literally word for word. I'm going to credit you, but I want to say what you just said again for me because I want people listening because you're on the same page that I was whenever I decided the name. And I'm going to tell you this: Rise Above Justice is actually a white supremacist movement. The white or Rise Above movement is a white supremacist movement. The Rise Above Justice movement is the rebuttal to that to show that justice obviously needs to be prevailed and
Yeah.
we can receive justice. But Rise Above movement is actually a white supremacist movement.
Mhm.
This is the rebuttal to that.
Yeah.
So say what you just said again because
Yeah.
I want to write it down. I
Yeah.
have ah
Justice is not the ceiling, justice is the floor. So many
mhm.
people talk about, for example, you mentioned trans folks, the LGBT community. When people talk about the discrimination they face, they think about, equal rights and, don't discriminate in the workplace. Well, it's incredibly impossible to prove workplace discrimination. And it's very arduous to go through the court process and very costly as well. And if you're applying for a job that you don't get, but you can't prove that you were discriminated against, well, you need money. That's why you're applying for a job. So you don't have money to pay a lawyer, and you don't have the time to go through all of that. So how do we rise above justice for those folks, for disproportionately impacted people? And that's why we need to solve for poverty. If we can get towards a guaranteed income, then that's going to be more helpful. That will be above justice. And the levels above justice are kindness and then kinship, right? So like treating each other like family is way above justice. That is what we should be getting towards. And the core of every faith, besides the divine stuff, is love your neighbors. Love your neighbors. That's the ceiling for me. How do we get to that? So, you mentioned that your listeners are out there traveling and they're seeing a lot of things. And they're probably seeing in this nation the sun setting on it. And in the loneliness of that darkness, they may wonder who's going to come to save us. The answer is it's us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And I'm waiting for you to join us on this journey as we work and struggle to that next sunrise of a new nation. The way to find us is, you go to our website, salaamforva.com. That's SALAAMFORVA.com. At the bottom of our page is all of our social media handles. And if you're willing to donate, we'd love to accept your contribution. Over 2,000 contributions have been made to our campaign, all from hardworking folks. No corporate PACs, no foreign interests, just people who believe that we need this representation in Congress. And if that speaks to you, I'd love to speak with you, and join us on this journey to get this country on track. And I don't say get this country back on track because it never was on track, but now we have that opportunity. Because we know the House will flip blue in November, but the question is, which shade of blue will it be? That's a decision we all get to make in the primaries that are coming for a lot more states right now. So pay attention to those primaries and vote for those candidates who are not beholden to corporate interests or to foreign interests, who are running on policies that you need in your life and your neighbors can benefit from as well. And let's send those folks to Congress. And then we can actually see the change that we need in this nation. So Salam for VA.com. All my social media handles are Salaam Bhatti VA, SalaamBhattiVA. And there's also a volunteer form on our website. We have nearly 200 volunteers, 20 different ways to volunteer, whether you're in the state or not. And we're just, we're moving forward. We're excited every single day we is a new journey and we're getting there. So I'm just rambling at this point, but I'm just overcome with emotion as people sacrifice their time and their talent and their treasure in furtherance of our cause. And I'm deeply grateful and appreciative for all of them.
Absolutely. And I am deeply appreciative and grateful for you. I am so excited to continue watching your campaign, continue watching you grow, not only as a human being, but also as a candidate and, a future congressperson. I can absolutely feel it with every ounce of my being because this is you represent the working class. You represent the unhoused folks. You represent the trans people that are in your district. They have an ally, right? They have this person that is willing to go to bat.
Hmm.
That's literally for the people. You can't get any more people than that. You can't get any more people focused, and that is the true America first, because that is what it truly means to be a real patriot, to be a real, this person centered and human, people over party, people over politics. It comes down to your constituents are depending on you to represent them in Washington, but not just in Washington, but out in your district and, talking to your other colleagues about, hey, what are your constituents saying? This is what my constituents are saying. You know, can you do something similar to this? Because I'm sure your constituents, over here in Kansas or over here in Missouri or, California, et cetera, they would benefit from this. What is just that building that momentum and building that movement, I think is absolutely critical in this very moment. But
And,
again,
and Zachary, I will say, we only have two full-time staff. It's me and my campaign manager. So if you can please donate so we can hire more staff to make things much easier for my campaign manager. She's a rock star. She's phenomenal. But we are now in the final few months before the primary, and things are just going to go up to, we're just going to dial it up to 10 over the next few months. But we need contributions so that we can hire more people so we can win.
absolutely, 100%. Um, in the description of this episode will also be your donation link. It'll also be your website, and it'll also be your social media handle so people can continue to uplift the work that you are doing. And again, I want to say thank you for coming on the podcast. I greatly appreciate you.
And likewise, thanks so much, Zachary.
Thank you.